Hi, the purpose of this video is to walk you through the KIS Middle School Social Studies curriculum. So this video is going to focus on three areas: the units we teach for each grade level, the themes within those grade levels, and the targeted skills throughout 6th through 8th grade. First of all, what is social studies? We focus on 5 themes of social studies: history, geography, culture, government, and economics. And you can see from this graphic some of the focal points that we have for each of those themes. Our first unit in grade 6 is what is geography, followed by adaptability, and then structures, beliefs, and balance. And so I'll walk you through each one. And so first, what is geography? This is our first unit. This is an introduction for our 6th grade students to kind of ease them into some of the themes that we will hit upon throughout middle school. And so geography is certainly a major part of that. They'll be reading maps, they'll be looking at different uh, characteristics of maps, such as locations, coordinates, geographical features such as rivers, deserts, bodies of water, mountains, and so on. And then also the purpose of a key located on a map. And one of the things that we find is that students definitely need this as a foundation as they continue through with social studies. In Unit 2, we call it adaptability, and this unit focuses on the first humans. And so we start with the origins of man, where man was discovered, some of the different adaptations that they went through in the revolution, discoveries that they made, creations they had to help with surviving and thriving, migration patterns, and things associated with that. Unit 3 we call structures, and this one is really about civilization. So as you move from first humans, we start focusing more on established civilizations, not just tribes or or semi-sedentary or non-sedentary peoples. And so there are 5 components of civilization. We have writing, government, religion, division of labor, and class structure. In addition to these 5 components of civilization, we also focus on the 4 elements of civilization, which are the political, economic, social, and cultural aspects of that civilization. Some of the civilizations that we focus on are Mesopotamia, uh, Egypt, and civilizations along the Fertile Crescent. Grade 4 we call beliefs, and this is really a study of polytheistic and monotheistic world religions. And so we focus on these 5 major religions. We focus on their holy books, their beliefs, their practices, their people, areas of concentration for these religions, patterns of spreading the religion, and so on. And then we also look at similarities and differences between these religions. The last unit of grade 6 we call balance, and this one is really dealing with East and West. So the 2 major civilizations we look at are the Roman Empire and the Han Empire in China. We look at it through the lens of trade as a way to have interaction between these civilizations and how ideas spread. And all this was done through the Silk Road network. And since this is the culminating unit, there is a major project at the end that focuses on both trade and writing. Writing is a major part of all of these units, as well as the other themes that I've already mentioned. Now moving on to grade 7, we have 5 units, and I'll go through each one individually. So the first one we call geofarming, and this one is really about how the earth has changed over the centuries, and especially in more recent history, and also the challenges that come along with it, scarcity of resources, and how people adapt to overcome these challenges. The second one we call collaboration, the primary focus of this one is engineering and how different civilizations or cultures interact with each other to develop and meet their needs. Unit 3 we call creativity. And creativity primarily focuses on the pre-Columbian civilizations of the Americas. There are four major civilizations that we look at, and one of the things that all of these civilizations have in common is they all had to be creative and innovative to meet their needs due to either geography, available resources, diminishing resources, or other obstacles that the location presented to them. And then we wrap it up with some of the major accomplishments because of these innovations. Unit 4 we call discovery, and this one really focuses on the the progression of what life was like in the Middle Ages up to the Renaissance and beyond, and how thinking and ideas evolved. And so we focus on how new ideas were encouraged, and at one point they were stifled. And there was, by the time you got to the Renaissance, there was a push for learning and questioning knowledge, not just simply accepting it because higher ups passed this information down. So people began to challenge long held beliefs regardless of the consequences, and eventually they tore down these barriers to learning. The fifth unit we call consequences. And so, where the third unit leaves off with the civilization of the Americas, with focusing on pre Columbian history, Unit 5 focuses on those same civilizations when they encountered Europeans. And so there was for sure a collision of these cultures, and many of these new intruders were not looking for collaboration but for conquest. And so the impact on the native cultures of the Americas was severe. And so one of the things we look at is just how these once great civilizations were decimated in just a short span of time. And this is also where grade 8 will begin, so this serves as a perfect bridge between grade 7 and grade 8. The 8th grade curriculum focuses on United States history up until the Civil War. The first unit, as I already mentioned, it begins where grade 7 leaves off with European contact with the Americas, and we quickly move past it and start looking at some of the systems that were developed because of this new interaction. And so you see that there was a lot of goods going from the old world to the new world and vice versa. There were other goods that are not shown on here that were also exchanged. Because of this new contact, some major empires were created by the Portuguese and the Spanish, and then we start focusing more on the English and the French, and eventually focusing entirely on the English. The second unit goes from these early years of where Europeans were colonizing in North America to where they became developed cities and towns and colonies, eventually wanting independence due to being unable to work with the mother country. And so conflicts develop, followed by rebellion, eventually a war, and then independence. Now, we don't just look at revolution of the American colonies, but we also look at revolutions of other countries going on, or other colonies going on throughout the Americas. Unit 3 is formative government. So this primarily focuses on the establishment of the United States government as we know it today. It started with the U.S. Constitution and some of the elements that we see throughout the world today in modern day democracies, such as three branches of government, checks and balances, state versus federal authority, and how elected governments run everything. This was for sure a departure from the old way of governing where you had monarchies and dictatorships and people taking power by force. And now, it was a new system. And so from today's perspective, students think, oh, it's always been that way. Well, this shows that it's far more of a recent thing in history than something that's been around for millennia. Unit 4 focuses on how the country started running itself after this new government was formed. And there were a lot of challenges. There was a lot of setbacks, but eventually they figured out a lot of ways of making it work. And so we look at the two-party system that developed, which is different from the two-party system we have today, yet they do share similarities. As a new country, there's a lot of things, a lot of systems that had to be developed, a lot of policies that had to be developed. So we look at some of the successes and setbacks that they had. And then there was a major shift during the election of 1800. The United States eventually started expanding, starting with the Louisiana Purchase, and then they had another war, their first since their war, their revolution. And so you kind of see through this how countries evolve and just kind of find their way, and it's not very easy to start a country. Unit 5 we call modernization, and this focuses on the Industrial Revolution. And so the Industrial Revolution focused on many shifts that happened in society, from people moving from the countryside to cities, the way things were made, and where people worked and how things were produced. Transportation also evolved quickly during this time period. There were improvements to technology in just about every facet of society, and major public works were also began at this time to meet the growing needs of the country. Eventually, all these challenges that the country was putting off take center stage. The country kept developing in different ways, so you had sectional differences between the North and the South, and then eventually the West, and such as economic differences. These regions they focused on different areas, partly due to their resources, partly due to their populations. Regardless, conflicts ensued. One thing that was constant throughout this time was their conflict over slavery. As we got closer, as the country got closer to 1860, these differences became harder to ignore and harder to navigate, and eventually they escalated to violence. And this drift to civil war culminated with the election of 1860. And after that, the final unit is Civil War. And so the Civil War was the bloodiest American war because everyone involved was an American. There were lots of casualties in many of the battles simply because their goal was to win. So it was a costly war. It tore the country apart. The land in the South, especially, was devastated. This is where the majority of the battles took place. In the end, the country remained one, although it needed a major rebuilding or reconstruction effort to bring it back together. And this is where the school year ends. Now, as far as those skills that I mentioned at the beginning of the video, so there are four major areas that we focus on: processing skills, executive function, basic academic skills, and higher academic skills. And as you can see, all the different units that we have, we could replace them with other units and other topics, and we would still focus on these skills. And these are the skills that students will need as they move on through school and through life, right? These are the things that, we don't teach school so they can be good at school, but so they can be productive people. And as you look at these, it's really hard to argue the validity for any of these. Now, the last thing that I want to leave you with is for grade 8 students going on to KIS grade 9, one of the required courses is Asian Studies. One of two of the novels that the teachers there recommend students to read over the summer are Boxers and Saints. These are two separate graphic novels that that serve as preparation for Asian studies. In their opinion, there's no better set of books that students can use that they would find interesting. They're not textbooks, and so these are things that students can read cover to cover, engage in, and actually learn and be better prepared for grade 9.